Hi there, I'm Tax Thornton.
I'm Asha Clearwater.
We've been together for 23 years now. 23 years. Lots of people talk about menopause, but I think we've got a different perspective as two women who live together, who have both been going through menopause and perimenopause at the same time. There's 6 years between us. Asha's 6 years ahead of me. It's true. Sorry. Most people think I'm older, so how's that fair?
It's living with me that makes you
That's probably it, particularly since menopause. But when Asha first started getting symptoms of perimenopause, I had no idea what was happening. I thought I was losing my wife. It was like living with a different person, because when perimenopause first hit for you, it was quite different to the way it hit me, wasn't it? How was it when it first started happening for you?
Oh, goodness me. Forgetfulness, irritability, big time, losing my temper. I've always had quite a temper anyway. A lot of my friends kind of think I'm not like that, but I am. I have got a very short temper, but I got 10 times worse. Hot flushes, forgetting things, forgetting even if I'm going out in the car, forgetting where I was going from one room to the next in the house. Really, memory problems. Goodness me, all sorts
of forgetfulness is clearly a thing, because she's told you she has forgetfulness 3 times now. So there's the proof that it actually is. It's a thing.
All right, okay.
And yeah, we might laugh about it. I think that this is what seems to happen, doesn't it? The sitcoms and the media, it's treated as a joke. And there have been funny moments, like when we found the TV remote in the fridge.
Or when I went to get in the wrong car at the vet's.
She actually got into the wrong car, and it had 3 kids in it. And yes. She still didn't realise she was in the wrong car until the key wouldn't turn in the ignition.
And I had to apologise and get out and then go into the veterinary practice and apologise to the mum, who wasn't the mum and actually was the carer. But anyway, we digress.
But the differences were stark. So once we realised what was going on, and it took a while, because eventually it got so bad with Asha's moods that you ended up going to your GP, didn't you? Mm-hmm. And of course, he did what so many GPs do and just prescribed antidepressants. There was no mention of menopause or perimenopause. It was just, you're going through depression, take these. And you've still got them in the drawer, haven't you?
Yeah, they're there. But for me, the act of actually accepting and recognizing that I needed help and taking that step to go to the GPs was enough for me. And it's different for everybody, but for me it wasn't really. It was like I ended up crying in the appointment with him, and which I don't do with strangers very often, really. And I was in a real state, but he didn't know how to deal with it. It was quite obvious, and it was just like, prescribe antidepressants, and that was it. And off I went. So it was a really difficult time, wasn't it?
I think the big thing people need to recognize is that it can and frequently does put a massive strain on relationships. I mean, the amount of guys I've spoken to whose wives have been through menopause and they just don't get it. That it's almost as if they think that their partner is being deliberately aggressive, abusive, short, dappy, forgetful, tearful. And they kind of have this, just pull yourselves together and get on with it. I was talking to a networking colleague of mine not too long ago who was telling me how terrible it had been for his son, and he didn't understand what was going on with his son's wife, but he'd moved out and he was trying to support them and he didn't know how they'd get through it. And I'm saying, well, if I'm not sounding rude here, how old is his wife? Mm-hmm. And all of the pieces slotted together, but so many people are not understanding what it's like at all. You know, we all laugh about, oh, the hot flushes. Oh, isn't it funny? Ha ha ha.
No, there's nothing
My
funny
thermostat
about it.
Doesn't work. But what they don't recognize is that when your thermostat isn't working, that can have all kinds of reactions. So for me, when that first started, it started to trigger an adrenaline response. And I remember when it first started to badly kick in for me, we were away on a long weekend over in the southwest. And on the first night, I don't normally drink a lot. Neither of us do. We were occasional wine drinkers, or I can be a bit of a Scotch malt, single malt nerd. But it was always for taste rather than, you know, because frankly, once you get to that point where it's legal to drink, it gets a bit boring to just get drunk. And I didn't need to anymore. But we went away and we went for a meal on the first night, and we did that. We're on holiday. Let's have a glass of wine thing. And I had just one glass of red wine. And the next day, I was appalling. I had never before had a panic attack in my life. And yet a panic attack started to happen. I didn't recognize it because I'd never had them. I'd worked with people who'd had panic attacks. So eventually I started to recognize this must be what it is. But even when that started to get out of my system, I felt as though I was on the edge of panic 24/7. And that is such a horrible feeling. You know, I've been through breakdown and depression and burnout in my corporate days. And that's part of my backstory. But this was different. This was not the same as being depressed. It was not the same as just being a bit anxious or stressed. This was on the edge of expecting to have a heart attack any minute and waiting to fall off the world. It's a horrid, horrid feeling. But that gradually got better. And then the day after that, we went out and had, we found a place that did the most wonderful cream teas in Cheddar.
We did. I remember that day.
Yeah. And we had, I'd already been in a bit of a state, which was why we were going for a cream tea. And I ordered this beautiful blend of black tea.
Oh dear, no, not a good move.
And they brought out this beautiful big pot, and I sat and drank through this pot of black tea. And then that evening, the same thing started to happen. The jitters, the panics, the what's going on. And there were of course would have been quite a lot of sugar in the cream tea as well. And I started to research. You know, we're both former journalists, so we started to research. And that's when we started to realize this is the beginnings of perimenopause. Because again, what happens when your thermostat starts to go a little bit haywire, when some hormones start to drop, it can trigger an adrenaline response, which is what triggers the panic attacks. Yeah. And so I've since learned that in order to not have these panic attacks, I need to cut out refined sugars, caffeine, and alcohol. No vices for me, thanks very much. I haven't gone down the HRT route yet. We've thought about it. We've talked about it a lot.
Quite a bit, haven't we?
Asha hasn't.
Now, that's one of the things I think that needs addressing is with the whole HRT thing. HRT is so different. I was stuck in 1970s, 1980s world when my mum went on HRT, when it was really early on in its development. Yeah. And she had horrendous problems. And we know now, if you do any kind of research, it is not like that. There is so much more on offer for women now to work with it. So that really took me back, didn't it? And we had to have lots of discussions about that. At the moment, I'm not on it. I'm not ruling it out, but I feel at the moment I'm okay as I am. And that's got to be an individual's reaction and decision, isn't it, to take that or not to go down that route?
No, I'm on the cusp of asking for it really, and it's because again the way it's hit me has been quite different. So Asha went through a predominantly angry phase, and again once we recognized that it was the beginnings of menopause, then I could deal with it because I understood that I hadn't done something wrong. She wasn't falling out of love with me. We weren't breaking apart.
And that's a really good point, because how many couples get to
well, you didn't know what was going on. All of a sudden, you were just angry and fraught all the time.
Yeah. And we were clashing over really silly little things and turning them into huge things. And then it would end up in tears and we'd both be apologizing to each other and we'd get stuck in that cycle.
Yeah.
So be aware of that too, I'd say to people in a partnership.
And it's not the same for everyone. Again, it was anger for Asha, and then occasionally you'll get bouts when your hormones flare up a bit, won't you? But for me, it was angst and it was tears. I was crying over anything. And I don't just mean, oh, look at that cute little Andrex puppy on the telly. I mean, proper floods, feeling like my heart was breaking apart, feeling like there was part of me was missing, feeling that I was losing my mind. I felt like I was going mad. And touch wood, she says, tapping on the tabletop. I don't know how, but somehow when I'm with my clients, something switches and I'm able to get back into gear very, very quickly. But it's in those moments where I'm not in work mode, where I can just sit back, relax, sit back with my wife, with our fur kids, one of whom you might see jumping up in a minute. And that's when it would hit. When I wasn't distracted with other things, when I felt safe, when I felt in my comfort zone. And that's something else that's really important for relationships as well. Because I know early on, I was thinking, well, why is Asha only in this irritable, angsty state when she's with me? Why is it that when it comes to evenings and weekends, her mood gets worse? And of course, I would take that very personally. I now understand, in going through it myself, that the reason it hits worse when you're sitting with your family, when you're chilling out, is because you feel comfortable. because you don't have all this stuff going around in your head to distract you, then suddenly you're in a place where you feel safe and held. And so all this stuff can bubble up. So interestingly, I think one thing we both found that has helped is diet has been immense.
It's huge for me, and exercise.
Diet and exercise.
Moving
you might laugh
out
at
of
this, but if I reach down under here, there are.
It's going somewhere. There is
under the table. But I've taken to keeping dumbbells next to
That's
my
a big dumbbell, Taz.
That's only a 10k, but next to my working area. Weights, because I find that if I'm starting to get a little bit panicky, if I can feel some of the perimenopausal demons creeping up, if I just sit and grab a dumbbell and do reps, once I get to the point, dog's head about to appear, I promise that is a dog's head, it's not me. Once I get to a certain amount of reps and I've built my endorphins, the panic starts to subside. And I know for you, it was walking, wasn't it? You took to walking a lot.
Did. I used to, we live out in the country anyway, so we've got some nice walks around us and places that go with the dogs, but it was literally right, grab a dog or just go, sometimes it was just go on my own and go around the block, which is about, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile, I suppose. And just in doing that for a little while, coming back, just having the fresh air, moving your body, move out of that state, change body, change state is my little mantra to myself. And so that's what I do. And then I discovered the joys during lockdown of virtual challenges, which was another thing.
And we invested in just a collapsible fold-up exercise bike. Like many people, we don't have a lot of room to have a gym in the house. So we bought a fold-up exercise bike and we both started using that. And that helped no end as well. And of course, the byproduct of that is that we've both got fitter and got into a better shape. So that's a bonus. I think the other thing people don't talk about so much with menopause, and I was going to say particularly with women, but we're talking about the menopause, not the menopause, is where you start to carry your weight differently.
Yeah.
So I've certainly got menopause tummy at the minute. One of the guy we worked with when we went vegan, the nutritionist, referred to the belt of affluence. So many Westerners have this belt of blubber, and when we go through those hormonal changes during menopause and perimenopause, it gets much harder to shift the weight. So ladies, if you're going through that, give yourself a break.
Yeah.
And the other,
really important.
Absolutely, and other bodily changes. Skin. Do you remember what was happening with your skin?
My skin. I had some skin issues when I was younger, when I was in puberty, and I had a lot of rosacea and other things like that. And when it was like going back there again, it was like being that teenager with acne. It was horrendous.
We actually were worried and thinking you were having an allergic reaction to something, weren't we?
My eyelids would swell up as well.
Erupted.
It was horrendous, and I had a session of that. It was times when it was really awful. It was really painful. The rashes were
never
really
seen anything
painful.
like it. It's not just acne, literally eyelids swelling up, crusty, sore, weeping.
Not good.
Awful.
So, and you imagine that if if you're going through that, if you've got that on top of everything else, it's a hell of a lot to deal with. And then you're trying to socialize. Before lockdown, we were going out to networking events, doing all those things, trying to be sociable, trying to keep it together. It's a lot of pressure and a lot of things to deal with for people, isn't it? So be kind.
Absolutely.
Be kind to yourself, please, and seek advice. But shop around for that advice, I'd say as well. You've got to find the right advice for you.
If you go to your GP and he just tries to prescribe, or she just tries to prescribe antidepressants, you don't have to accept that. There are lots of medical professionals out there now, and other consultants who specialize in women's health and in things like menopause and perimenopause. So just be willing to take second opinions and be brave enough to ask for those, and be prepared as well to make some changes. So again, for us, we're pretty stable, and again, we weren't using things like alcohol and sugar as crutches. But even for us, it was quite a wrench. And caffeine's part of the work mode, isn't it? We go to coffee shops, we have a good coffee.
I don't drink coffee
or even
now.
Tea. I can't even have decaffeinated tea. Caffeinated tea.
I do have tea, but at home we now go to decaf, and I really shouted and screamed about that. I love my tea. Yeah. I'm such an English person who loves their tea every day and have lots of it. And going to decaf was a step too far, but I've done it and I've got used to it.
And one important thing to realise, and I realised this to my folly, I loved coffee, so I started ordering during lockdown big vats, industrial sized vats of decaf coffee. And the panic attacks started again, and we couldn't work out why until we started to dig a little bit deeper. That research comes in again, and actually decaf coffee does have an element of caffeine in it. So if you're drinking a lot of it, not going to work. I have such a hair trigger now. Even if I have a decaf coffee, it trips me.
And water. Drink lots of water.
Lots of water.
I know we all hear it every day, and you just say to drink, but it's true.
Even if we might not want to think a bit about it, but when we start to get a bit older, sometimes our bladder can have a bit of a hair trigger.
Yeah.
So if you're not
actually, tea can actually be an irritant. Can be an irritant to your bladder as well. So that's something to think about. So
if you're one of these people who are thinking, I'm not going to drink more water because I might need to wee or I might sneeze and the unthinkable might happen.
I really do. We know we've had lots of discussions about that.
Drink water anyway. Honestly, just start drinking more on the days where you're not going anywhere. And it doesn't matter if you have a bit of an accident or if you have to keep running to the loo, because your body will get used to the water consumption, and that needing to go to the loo every 5 minutes is just a temporary adjustment. So go through it. Other things I noticed, this might be a bit TMI, I don't know, but I have adenomyosis, and the way that's been treated for me for years is with a coil, which we've always laughed about. Look, I'm a lesbian with a coil, just in case, just in case. But where perimenopause has hit and the hormones have started fluctuating again, every now and then I'm getting the adenomyosis pain again, which I hadn't had for years. So it can trigger all kinds of things. It's not just a they're having a midlife crisis. It isn't that. There's no such thing as a midlife crisis. There's just getting to that point where you realize the life that you're living is not one you want to be living. That's a massive realization, not a midlife crisis. And when it comes to menopause and perimenopause, it's not a midlife crisis. It's a genuine medical transition that women go through that causes way more issues than the majority of us are aware of. And again, we're obviously both cis women, and we didn't realize what was going on when it first started. So if the women who are going to at some stage go through menopause do not know what to expect, we as a people are failing. And we need to be talking about this far more, instead of just laughing it off as being a bit tearful and having hot flushes. It's more than that. And when people don't understand what's going on, it can ruin jobs, it can ruin relationships, it can ruin people's psyche, mental health, emotional health. We need to talk about this more. We need to get better at educating not just our women, but the men who live with us and deal with us every day. We need to get better at understanding and giving people the coping mechanisms and the tools to come through this as smoothly as possible. Anything else to say?
No, I think that sums it up, doesn't it? But stay in there, believe that you can come through it. That's the main thing. Seek support where you can. That's so important. Talk about it, ladies, amongst your peers, your groups, and also with your partners. Always talk, keep the discussion.
Guys, you talk too. If you hear, if some of your peers, some of your pals are saying their wife's being a tyrant, then talk to them. Get them to look at this, because their wife or the partner might not know either. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for listening. I hope this has been helpful. Be gentle with yourselves, be kind to yourselves. Research, hit up Google. It doesn't always have all the best answers, but it will at least perhaps give you a few light bulb moments. Talk not only to your GP, but to health professionals. Talk to other women. Talk to some women, some female health consultants. Talk to people who know about menopause. Go and watch that Davina documentary on menopause. That only really scratched the surface, but it was good.
More of that, please. That's
more of that. Keep talking and keep listening. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.